Hey everybody, what's up? And welcome into another edition of Straight Facts Homie, the podcast where we don't yell at you, we don't scream at you, we don't offer you our outlandish takes or tell you why we think things because of our feelings. We tell you what we believe because of the data and the information, and we have it to back things up. Why we do what we do, we want to make you a smarter sports fan, and you know what you're watching, which is why you're here. So thank you for continuing to like and subscribe, and we got a lot to get into, including what happened today at Soldier Field. Remember that press conference where the Cowboys traded away Micah Parsons for a couple of number ones, and Jerry said, well, we're going to get better, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, maybe in the future, with two potential late first round picks from the Green Bay Packers. And that may all happen in some alternate universe where Jerry Jones and his thought processes go. But in the real world where we are today, the Dallas Cowboys just embarrass themselves again. They go into Soldier Field and get strafed by the Chicago Bears and Caleb Williams 31-14. Now, I need to be more specific about what I'm talking about here. When I say they got embarrassed, they didn't just get embarrassed. They were, what's the word I'm looking for? Eviscerated defensively by a quarterback who has had a modicum of success through his first season and his first couple of games in Caleb Williams. You know, it was going to be all the rage this year that Caleb Williams is going to get so much better with new head coach Ben Johnson, who came over after all those years play calling for the Lions, and on the first drive of the Monday night game against the Vikings, looked great. And ever since then, it's been boatloads of nothing for Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. Until today, when they pretty much did whatever they wanted to in taking down the Dallas Cowboys by the final score of 31-14. Now, when I say they did whatever they wanted to, I mean that very specifically. They picked and chose how they wanted to attack that Cowboys defense. Caleb Williams on the day, 19-28, 289 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Caleb Williams, a quarterback who people are talking about. Did the Bears make a mistake? Did the Bears not think this thing through? Were all the detractors about Caleb Williams true? Apparently not. The only thing that could cure Caleb Williams was the Cowboys defense. So while I am happy for Caleb Williams, and it looks like he has made a quantum leap forward, there's a rule in journalism: consider the source, right? Always consider the source. Is this rumor true? Is this possible? Consider the source. What are they really telling you? Because what you think about the source should tell you what you think about the information. So in this situation, when we see this unbelievable game out of Caleb Williams, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, he was on time, he was precise. That's good for Caleb, but against the backdrop of what? Against the backdrop of a Dallas Cowboys defense that is putrid. But hey, don't take Caleb Williams for it. Let's just go back a week. Back-to-back unbelievable quarterback performances against the Dallas Cowboys by Caleb Williams and whatever is left of Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson threw for almost 500 yards last week against that Cowboys secondary. And the only reason the Cowboys escaped with a win is that Russell Wilson made one bad decision in overtime, tossing it up to Wilson, the safety. And the Cowboys have the greatest kicker in football right now in Brandon Aubrey. He had another 50-plus yarder today. In his career, Brandon Aubrey is 27 out of 30 on field goals 50 yards or longer. A lot of kickers would love that percentage on extra points, which are 17 yards shorter. So the only way the Cowboys haven't started this season 0-3 is because Brandon Aubrey and Russell Wilson bailed them out. This defense that apparently Micah Parsons was a big problem of is disastrous. They couldn't stop, to quote Bart Scott when he was a member of the Jets, a nosebleed. They couldn't stop anything. So you have the Cowboys with their secondary being torn apart. Now, run with me on here something, because I think this is really important. If you have a secondary that is leaky or having a lot of people recovering from surgeries and injuries, what's the best thing that would help a secondary that has issues? What could it be? Could it be a run-stuffing linebacker? Would it be a blocking tight end? No, you paid that guy. Oh, it would be a pass rusher. Right. It would be someone who could offset all the faults of the secondary, because he's so good at getting to the quarterback that you don't just eliminate one passing option as a shutdown corner would. Pressure eliminates all the options on defense, all the options on offense, because he gets to the quarterback before he's ready to do what he wants to do, and the quarterback panics and he makes bad decisions. Well, the Dallas Cowboys, on the day that Caleb Williams absolutely picked them apart, had zero sacks on the day. Not one. Not a single one. Now, why do you think that is? And go back the week before. Why do you think that the remnants of Russell Wilson had a career day, 400 plus yards, all these touchdowns, Malik Neighbors, whoever he wants to hit? Oh, they couldn't get any pressure on the quarterback. Well, you traded away one of the guys that's the best in the business at doing that, in Micah Parsons to Green Bay. Micah Parsons is one of a few players in the history of the NFL to have at least 12 and a half sacks in 4 of his first 5 seasons. Another one you might have heard of, his name is Reggie White, who also went on from his original home in Philadelphia to play for the Green Bay Packers in free agency, and of course became a first ballot Hall of Famer. Now, Micah Parsons is not there yet. He's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, but this was a first ballot Hall of Fame ridiculous football decision by the Dallas Cowboys to get rid of Micah Parsons. So we do this show because we're tired of people feigning outrage. We're tired of people making up takes based on their feelings. And we're tired of people trying to sell you shit when it's shinola. Okay? Because at the end of the day, this trade of Micah Parsons made the Cowboys a much worse football team. There's nothing else to say. There's no way to defend it. There's no way to look at it any other way. So if you're saying to yourself, and you're buying the Jerry Jones and the Cowboys front office BS, well, yes, but it'll make us a better team in the next couple of years. All right. Well, if that's the case, why did you pay an exorbitant amount of money to wide receiver CeeDee Lamb for this year? Why are you dealing with Dak Prescott being the highest paid quarterback in football this year, if your plans are for the next couple of years? Look, we're 3 games into the season, and this much we know. The Dallas Cowboys can't stop anybody. And, Micah Parsons was supposedly a big part of their defensive problems against the run. Bears kind of did whatever they wanted against the run, too. They did whatever they wanted. A week after the Giants and Russell Wilson did whatever they wanted. And were it not for Jalen Carter expectorating and the Eagles playing at home and not really figuring a lot of stuff out, this might be an 0-3 start. Might be an 0-3 start for the Dallas Cowboys based on their defense alone. Now, Dak Prescott did not play very well today. He had a couple of interceptions. He threw for 250, 31 of 40. He was all right, but he had a couple of key turnovers. The consistent problem for the Dallas Cowboys in the start of the 2025-26 season is that they can't stop anybody through the air because they can't apply any pressure to the quarterback. Do you see the through line connection I'm making there? Is there something that ties it all together, that one helps the other or offsets the other, or one strength would cover up a weakness? You're with me, right? It's you need a pass rush. You cannot survive in the NFL if you don't have a pass rush. You cannot win consistently in the NFL if you don't have a pass rush. And the one thing you never do is trade away a pass rusher, an elite pass rusher, and historically elite pass rusher in the prime of his career for 2 picks that you hope one day will maybe be half as good as the guy you gave up. Micah Parsons didn't have a sack today in the Packers' loss to the Browns, but he was relentless, had all kinds of pressure, and forced all kind of disruption on Joe Flacco. If the Cowboys could have had any kind of that relentless pressure and disruption against Russell Wilson and Caleb Williams, the Cowboys might be 2-1 instead of 1-2 and having no answers on how to stop anybody defensively. So kudos to Caleb. Big growing game process for him. The Dallas Cowboys continue to show you exactly who they are. An organization that doesn't know how to build a winning franchise. Maybe at some point you should believe them. Okay, let's talk for a second about that Rams-Eagles game, which was absolutely bonkers with the way it ended. And oh, by the way, as you continue to consume our content, which we hope you will continue to do a lot, make sure you tell your friends, hit that like and subscribe button because we're giving you nothing but the straight facts here. So that was the 17th straight game that the Eagles had won in which Jalen Hurts had started and then finished the game. The key word there being finished, because there's been a couple of games, especially last season, where Jalen was knocked out of the game and the backup had to come in and then things fell apart. And it sure looked like everything was falling apart in this game against the Rams. At one point, the Rams were up 26-7. It was a disastrous start. You couldn't get anything going for the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen wasn't hitting any big plays. Saquon Barkley continues to do very little this year. We'll get to that in a second. But what happened in the second half of that game? In the second half of the game, it was almost as if Jalen Hurts said, F it. Where is my guy, A.J. Brown? And that was the big turning point of the game offensively for the Eagles. He was held to essentially nothing in the first half. And then he finishes with 6 catches for 109 yards and a touchdown. And it felt like whenever there was a big play, 3rd and 11, 3rd and 10, what did Jalen Hurts do? Jalen Hurts went and found wherever A.J. Brown was, and that really kept that offense alive. But this game had a little bit of everything, okay? It started with a touchdown that probably shouldn't have happened for the Philadelphia Eagles because they scored on a tush-push sneak. And that play was clean. That play was fine. But on the play before the tush-push touchdown, there was another brotherly shove, tush-push play, whatever you want to call it, where once again, it was a blatant false start by the right guard of the Philadelphia Eagles. Now look, man, after everything that went on last week against the Chiefs, the NFL said, yeah, we messed that up, and we're going to do a much better job, much better job of scrutinizing the tush-push. And then on the first series, where there was a blatant false start, they missed it again. So, NFL, y'all need to tighten up a lot more than that, because that was so egregious. And that's been a huge controversy point this entire week. Should we revisit it? Should it be banned again? No, first of all, the play should not be banned, okay? The play should not be banned. People need to find a way to stop it. What the play should be done is officiated the right way. When it's a clear penalty, call the penalty. If they just called the penalty on all these times where the Eagles false started, none of the other teams would really have a problem with how successful they are because it wouldn't be as successful. So the root problem for other teams isn't banning the play, it's just officiated. And that leads to another big issue. The NFL officials are bad. They're just bad across the board. They don't like dealing with the tush-push because they can't see it as well. And that's one of the reasons you heard Dean Blandino say what he said on Fox last week. He's done with the tush-push. We're not done with the tush-push. It's not going anywhere. The NFL officials have just got to do a better job officiating it. So that's one thing. You saw a lot of resolve from the Philadelphia Eagles in this contest. Again, their 12th straight home win and their 17th straight win in which Jalen Hurts starts and finishes a game. But we always talk about this a lot. More games are lost than won in the NFL. And that game was significantly lost by the Rams. There were a couple of things that I could not figure out what the hell they were doing. There were a couple of situations where it was 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2, and instead of running it on 3rd and 1, they threw it down the field and incomplete. And then on 4th and short, well, you have that stout interior defensive line of the Philadelphia Eagles. So when it's 4th and short, you know they're going to run it up against that big wall, and that big wall dominated, okay? And that happened on more than one occasion in the play calling for the Rams in that game. But it also led to two things that were just huge turning points in this game. When they were up 26-21, they had a chance for a field goal that would have put them up 29-21, making it an 8-point game. You got to get the touchdown and the 2-point conversion. And Jalen Carter, when he's not spitting, is very good. Got one of those big mitts up there and blocked it. Okay, so that changed the whole dynamic of the game. Because if you make that kick, you got to get a touchdown and a 2-point conversion just to tie it. So then after that missed kick, what happened? Eagles go right down the field. They get the touchdown to take the lead, and then they went for the 2-point conversion to make it a 3-point game, so a field goal would only tie. And what happened? They missed it. So if the Rams had made that kick, that field goal there in that situation by Josh Carty, then the whole tenor of the game changes, and the Rams might have won it on that missed 2-point conversion. So the Eagles missed their 2-point conversion. They give the ball back, and the Rams have a timeout to hold on to. And this is why you always hold on to a timeout. I see so many teams not figure out when to use that timeout, when to spike the ball. The timeout in those situations is the most valuable possession you have. You know the old saying, possession is 9/10 of the law? When you possess a timeout on a potential game-winning drive, it changes everything for you. And the Rams worked the clock effectively. The Rams worked it to perfection. The Rams did exactly what they needed to do. They got down there and got themselves in a chance for a reasonable attempt, right around 50 yards, for a game-winning field goal. And the Eagles did it again. And this time it wasn't Jalen Carter. It was the other monster defensive tackle from Georgia, Jordan Davis. Gets that paw up there. And one of the more athletic plays I've ever seen for a guy that size, Jordan Davis makes the block, recovers the ball, and runs it back for a touchdown as time expired. Huge celebration. Great job by the Eagles. But if you're the Rams, you got to be sick to your stomach about the way this game ended and the way they sort of gave it away with just missed opportunities on execution. You know, if they just find a way to execute on a couple of field goals, or even one of those 2 field goals, including the first one that wasn't returned for a touchdown, they probably walk out of Philadelphia with a win, and they're feeling good about themselves. Instead, they're doing that crazy thing that so many teams do when they lose a game. We should have won that game, is what they're saying to themselves. We cost ourselves that game. You did. But because you cost yourself the games, that didn't mean you should have won the game. You lost the game because you didn't execute when it mattered most. Crunch time in the fourth quarter. So the Eagles are great, right? They're 3-0. Everything's wonderful. It's all looking fantastic, except for this one tiny thing that I told you to look out for when the season started. Do you remember the season preview I did with Mark Schlereth? I said, I'm not so sure that Saquon Barkley is going to be a huge factor this year, the way he was last year. And let's just look at the numbers for Saquon Barkley in this game. Saquon Barkley, 18 rushing attempts for 46 yards. Wow, that's an anomaly. Is it? Is it? Because let's go back and look for the year. Saquon Barkley is averaging 2.6 yards per carry. Now, why is that problematic? It's only a 3-game sample. Because it's really not a 3-game sample. What it is an historical indication of what happens to 2,000-yard rushers the year after. Again, we talked about this in our season opener. If you hadn't liked and subscribed by the time this happened, this will be good information for you to think about going forward. Because I did a breakdown of every one of the previous 2,000-yard rushers in NFL history. All 8 of them, okay? And what I did was I looked at their 2,000-yard season, and then I compared the next season after. And we'll start with O.J. Simpson. In O.J. Simpson's record-setting season of 1973, when he ran for 2,003 yards in 14 games, he averaged 6 yards a carry. In 1974, the next year, 4.2. Big drop, 1.8 yards per carry. How about Eric Dickerson, who still holds the single-season rushing record? Well, in 1985, the year after his 2,000-yard season, he ran for 4.2 yards a carry. The year before, he ran for 5.6. Okay, that's a 1.5 yard per play. Then Barry Sanders, his 2,000-yard season, ran for 6.1 yards per carry. The next year, 4.3. Terrell Davis went from 5.1 yards to 3.1 yards per carry the season after his 2000 season, and it ended shortly because he tore his ACL. Chris Johnson went from 5.6 yards a carry to 4.3 yards per carry the year after his 2,000-yard season. Adrian Peterson went from 6.0 to 4.5, and Derrick Henry in 2021 only played 8 games and went from 5.5 to 4.3. What does that data tell us? It tells us that the big explosive plays that you were used to a year ago from Saquon Barkley are not going to be there this year for Philadelphia. And We've now seen 3 straight games where that has been the case. Again, he's averaging 2.6 yards per carry. So what do you have to do in that situation? You have to find explosive plays somewhere else. And that was the best thing that the Eagles did in this game. They decided, if it's not coming from the guy that we rode all the way to the Super Bowl championship a year ago, we've got to get one of our other big playmakers involved. That playmaker so far this season, and especially on the Sunday win over the Rams, has been A.J. Brown. Held in check through the first half of that game and then exploded in the second half and really was the catalyst offensively for the Eagles to squeak away with a win. So if you're the Eagles, you're feeling great about the fact that you are 3-0. And again, if Jalen Hurts starts and finishes a game, you're more than likely to win it. But problematic for them going forward. The Saquon Barkley thing isn't going to get better. This is what to expect. I mean, he's going to have a couple of games where he pops. There's no question about it. But you're not going to see those massive runs. Like, for example, in the 2 games last year that Saquon Barkley played against the Rams, he ran for 460 yards and had 4 touchdowns. Today, he didn't have 50. That's not an indication of how good the Rams defense is. That's a great indication of what the data tells you about what it's like for a running back the year after a 2,000-yard season. And oh, by the way, Saquon's the only 2,000-yard rusher to ever go and play in the Super Bowl, which means 3 extra postseason games to add to that wear and tear of a 2,000-yard season. Eagles win. They're 3-0. Great. Rams heartbreak. They're thinking they lost that game. They did. But the bigger issue for Philadelphia, Saquon Barkley's big explosive plays just are not going to be there this year. They've got to manufacture other ways to do it like they did in the second half against the Rams.
You know, it's really important to not get carried away when a team or a player gets off to a hot start through the first 2 games of the season. We saw that last year when the New Orleans Saints started 2-0 and scored 40 points in each of their first 2 games. And people are like, hey, they haven't done this since this or this. 2 games is an indication of people have tape on you, right? So now, okay, after 2 games, we kind of know who you are unless there's been massive changeover. So the 3rd game is really where things settle in, and the Saints, of course, fell apart last year. And that's what makes what we saw from Indiana Jones, so significant on Sunday. Yes, they were playing the Tennessee Titans. I understand that, who are still looking for their first win on the season. But Daniel Jones and company did it again. They didn't punt until midway through the first half. That's the longest stretch in the Super Bowl era for any team to start a season without a single punt. And a big reason why is Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones continues to play next level quarterback, okay? In this game, he was 18 to 25, 228 yards, 1 touchdown, and more importantly, no interception. Why is that no interception important? Well, here's the list of quarterbacks in the history of the Indianapolis Colts / Baltimore Colts that went 3-0 to start a season and didn't have a single turnover. Daniel Jones, that's it. He's the only quarterback in the history of the Colts to start a season 3 straight wins and not have a single giveaway or turnover in those 3 games. Not Peyton Manning, not Andrew Luck, not anybody else. It's Daniel Jones. And what Daniel Jones and the Colts have figured out is that complementary football works. You don't have to do everything if you're Daniel Jones. You just have to do enough. And again, 18 to 25, didn't turn the ball over, 228 yards. Also ran 4 times for 27 yards and trucked a couple of Tennessee defenders, and that allowed everything else to happen. You look at what happens with Jonathan Taylor, 17 carries, 102 yards, 3 touchdowns in this game. All Daniel Jones has to do is not mess it up. And he's doing an amazing job of not messing it up. And people say, well, I need my quarterback to make spectacular plays. You don't, actually. You just need to make sure you avoid losing plays. Quarterbacks are essentially paid and respected for doing 3 things well. 3 things. Number 1, can you win on 3rd down? Can you keep the chains moving? Can you keep the drive alive? Daniel Jones has proven through 3 games he can do that. Number 2, when you get inside the red zone, inside the 20-yard line, can you convert points? And more specifically, can you convert drives into touchdowns instead of field goals? Daniel Jones has done that very, very well. The other thing, it's just as important, is execute in the 2-minute drill, either at the end of the first half or at the end of the game. Daniel Jones hasn't had to worry much about the end of the game, but in the one situation where he did last week against the Denver Broncos, he put him in a chance to get to a field goal that would have won the game. Then the Broncos committed the leverage penalty, which allowed them to re-kick from 15 yards closer, and that's what happened. Daniel Jones is proving that you don't have to be this knowing, all-encompassing, incredibly athletic quarterback. You just have to play smart. You have to work with the system around you, and you have to make the plays when they come to you. The Colts are off to their best start now, 3-0, since 2009, when Peyton Manning led them to the AFC Championship and a Super Bowl 44 in Miami, where they lost to the Saints 31-17. That was, of course, up until recent memory, the greatest onside kick in Super Bowl history, or in the NFL history, where the Saints started the second half with a surprise onside kick, which you can't do anymore. Hate that rule. Hate that rule. We have to tell you when you're kicking off an onside now, which is ridiculous, and led them to that win. But that's where we are with Daniel Jones. And, when Daniel Jones was named the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts, I got a lot of people telling me. First of all, I said it was the right decision because Shane Steichen has to win games if he wants to keep his job as a head coach. And he's doing a great job at winning games. They're off to a 3-0 start. Again, last time they did this, 2009, when Peyton Manning was under center. So he has found a way, a secret formula of success with Daniel Jones to find a way to win games. So when it was Anthony Richardson, who was not going to be the starting quarterback this year after being taken number 1 overall, very high, not 1 overall, but their top draft choice, top 5 pick a few seasons ago, people they're giving up too quickly on Anthony Richardson. And I was like, no, they're not giving up too quickly on Anthony Richardson, because if they keep sticking with Anthony Richardson, who can't complete 50% of his passes, you're looking for 100% unemployment by the Indianapolis coaching staff. They had to go with Daniel Jones, and their patience in Daniel Jones has been rewarded with the way he's playing. See, it doesn't matter if you're the biggest and the strongest and the fastest and the most explosive if you can't play the position. And right now in his career, it's been established that up to this point, Anthony Richardson can't play the position. Daniel Jones can play the position. And when you look at all his struggles in New York when he was with the Giants, a lot of them had to do with the bad offensive line and turnover issues, specifically fumbles as much as interceptions. Well, he has found a way to limit those things in a situation in Indianapolis where he finds himself with a really good offensive line, a lot of weapons around him, like we mentioned, including the running back Jonathan Taylor, a good core of wideouts, a great young tight end in Tyler Warren that they got in the draft this past year, and a defense that can choke out an opposition's offense. And when you put Daniel Jones in that kind of situation, it's amazing how good someone can be. Now, look, we're not suggesting that Daniel Jones is going to keep this up for 17 straight games and the Colts are going 17-0. That's not the point. The point is you have to find a way to be competitive in every game. And look, you look around the league, we see tons of reclamation projects that have worked out. Baker Mayfield has found a home in Tampa Bay. He is absolutely balling out again there for a third straight season, after bouncing around from the Browns to being a scout team defensive end for the Carolina Panthers, and a very short stay with the Los Angeles Rams, where he led them to an amazing win in a Thursday night game over the Raiders without really knowing any of the playbook. What Sam Darnold is doing in Seattle after doing it well in Minnesota, after flaming out with the Jets. You can have success in a second act. So Anthony Richardson, that success may come for you, but I'm not sure it's going to be coming where you were drafted, because Daniel Jones is still only a 2019 draft pick. He was taken in the first round of 2019. He's still a relatively young guy. And oh, by the way, we talk about the symbiotic relationship between a quarterback and an offensive coordinator. Well, the offensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts is a very unsung hero in all of this. And he has one of the greatest names in all of football. It is the legendary Jim Bob Cooter. And Jim Bob has had success in a couple of places around the NFL before landing in Indianapolis, and he's been there a couple of years. And clearly, the combination of Daniel Jones getting a better team around him, Daniel Jones fixing his problem, of not turning the ball over and relying on everybody else to help you win games is a miraculous recipe. This is why I say all the time, wins and losses are not quarterback stats. Now, a quarterback can impact your ability to win more than any other position in football and maybe any other position in team sports in this country. But at the end of the day, everyone else has to contribute. And what are we seeing now with the way these Indianapolis Colts are built? We have a running game. We have a bevy of wide receivers that can make plays for us. We have a decent kicker. We have a coaching staff that's doing things the right way. You know, so many of these young quarterbacks get into situations where they're not coached well. And that creates problems, and then you bounce around and you go from place to place to place. Sometimes you just need a change of scenery. You know, Daniel Jones was recently asked, what's it like coming from New York to Indianapolis? And he sort of chuckled and said, yeah, it's a slower pace around here, and I like that, and that's okay. You know, Daniel Jones was a quiet kid who played his college ball at Duke. We're not talking about when Eli Manning went from Oxford and the Manning family legacy to New York. Eli had been preparing for that his entire career with what his bigger brother did, Peyton, and before them, the father, the patriarch of the family, Archie. He knew what he was getting into. Sometimes when you're a quarterback from Duke and you're thrust into the spotlight of New York City and one or two things go the wrong way, it's easy to blame everything on the quarterback when it's everything that might be around him. And oh, by the way, look at all the success that Daniel Jones, Indiana Jones, is having with the Indianapolis Colts. Things aren't going so well for the Giants right now, are they? They continue to struggle. So sometimes we think the problem is one thing, and it might actually be the other. And one thing we can say with great certainty so far into this season, Daniel Jones is not the problem for the Indianapolis Colts. Indiana Jones might actually be the solution and not the problem. We're only 3 weeks into the regular season here in 2025, and we've already found out just how important the quarterback position is. We had 5 teams go into week 3 without their starting quarterback available to them and with very mixed results. Let's start with the backup bowl. It was Carson Wentz, not J.J. McCarthy, against Jake Browning and not Joe Burrow when the Vikings hosted the Bengals. This one got away from Cincinnati early and often, 48-10 the final score. Now look, not all of this was on the offense. Not all of this was on one player. Isaiah Rodgers had a historically great career day, the defensive back for the Vikings. He scored 2 touchdowns. He was the first Vikings defensive player in the history of that franchise. The Purple People Eaters. They've had some good defensive players over the years to score 2 touchdowns in a game. But what stood out to me was these stat lines from the quarterbacks. Carson Wentz backing up J.J. McCarthy, who, by the way, has now become the first player in NFL history to start for 6 different teams in 6 different seasons at quarterback. Carson Wentz was 14-20, 173 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Didn't try to do too much. Just let the game come to him. Other people are going to make plays. We've talked about that before. Let them do their thing. You just don't mess it up. Then there's Jake Browning, who a couple of years ago had an unbelievable run for the Cincinnati Bengals as a backup for Joe Burrow. He has not had that success yet this year. When Joe Burrow went down in week 2 in their win over the Jags, he threw 3 interceptions in about a half of football. And then he threw 2 more interceptions today. He was 19-27 for 140 yards, 1 touchdown, was sacked 3 times. So in about 6 quarters of football, Jake Browning has thrown 5 interceptions. That's just not going to get it done. You're not going to win that way. There's no way you're going to win consistently in that venue when you have that performance from a backup quarterback. You know, the weird thing about this for Cincinnati is that this is the first time in 4 years they hadn't started 0-2 or worse. They started 2-0 this year, but they lost Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is having surgery or had surgery. He's going to be out for 3 months. He's going to have to be out for 3 months, which means if the Bengals are still in playoff contention, maybe he comes back in late December, early January for one final game to push him into the postseason. But if the Bengals don't play better than this, they'll never see Joe Burrow this year. And that's the weird thing about this. They finally figured out how to get out of the gate early, but they can't get out of their own way with Joe Burrow being injured again. Again, we've talked about this before on this podcast because of their not being able to protect him correctly. Their pass block win rate has been abysmal over the last 4 seasons with Joe Burrow. And now you have Jake Browning tossing up interceptions. Samaje, they had look at their receivers. Jamar Chase, 5 catches for 50. T. Higgins, 1 catch for 15 yards. They paid those guys a lot of money because Joe Burrow is going to be their quarterback. Right now, Joe Burrow isn't going to be their quarterback. And even though they started 2-0, you could make a very compelling argument that it's gotten very late, very early for the Cincinnati Bengals. If Jake Browning doesn't turn around the situation with the turnovers, the Bengals will not make the postseason for a 3rd straight season. And that would be a shame with all the talent they have on offense. And when a healthy Joe Burrow's there, he's as good as anybody in football, including Josh Allen, which we will get into a little later on in this program. Okay, but those are just 2 of the backups that played, right? Let's go around the league and take a look at somebody else. Let's take a look, for example, at what we saw for the Washington Commanders as they took care of the Raiders, 41-24. Because of the injury to Jaden Daniels, they had to start Marcus Mariota. We had Zach Ertz, the fine tight end for the Washington Commanders, on the podcast. And he said something which I thought was very astute at the time. He said, you have 22 starters in this league, 11 on offense and 11 on defense. But if you don't consider your backup quarterback as your 23rd starter, you're in a lot of trouble. What you want out of a backup is a guy that you can trust to go in there and make plays, rely on everybody else around him, not do too much, and don't make the big mistake. Well, Marcus Mariota in that role today, 15-21, 207 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Now, he did fumble once running with the ball after a gain of about 27 or so, just kind of held it out there a little bit and got popped from behind. You can live with that. You don't love it, but you can live with that because for the rest of the day, Marcus did his job. Again, 15-21, 207 yards. So you just have to have that backup go out there and be capable. Don't make the big mistake. Figure out a way to get things done and just keep yourself in the game. We certainly saw that from Carson Wentz. We saw that from Marcus Mariota. We did not see that so much from Tyrod Taylor, who was filling in for Justin Fields. And then the Mac Jones situation with the 49ers was also a very, very interesting game late as they found a way to hang on to win 16-15, thanks in a large part to a holding penalty in the end zone that led to a safety. But then they let that happen, and then Mac Jones came back and led them down the field for a game-winning field goal. So Mac Jones once again found a way to get it done. You just have to have these backups find a way to keep you in games and rely on the rest of your playmakers. You can't have what Jake Browning is doing in Cincinnati. You can live with Carson Wentz. You can live with Marcus Mariota. And you can live with what Mac Jones did. But at the end of the day, you need to make sure that your backup quarterback gives you a chance to win the game. And that brings us to another point. Bill Belichick, who is having his own issues, by the way, at North Carolina, losing to South Florida over the weekend. And it was very important that his significant other be on the sidelines during the game because that matters. He said something very important once, which was more games are lost rather than won. And we certainly saw that today in several instances. We saw it in the Rams-Eagles game, which we'll talk about a little bit later on this show. The Rams could have put the Eagles away twice, failed to do it. Eagles hung around and found a way to win, which is what they always do. It's what good teams do. It's what the Chiefs did in all those one-possession games a year ago. They just find ways to make a play to beat you. We saw that in the game between the Chargers and the Broncos. The Chargers were down, but the Broncos couldn't punch it in the end zone a bunch of times to finish them off. They couldn't get a first down when they needed it. They gave the ball back with about 2 minutes left in the game, and they trotted out Cameron Dicker, who might be the most sure thing kicker in the NFL, not named Brandon Aubrey right now, when he drilled the game winner as the Chargers remain unbeaten on the season. The Broncos had every opportunity to put that game away, and they found a way to lose it. Same thing happened in Green Bay today. Okay, it was an ugly game in Cleveland against a Browns defense. And as bad as the Browns are offensively, and they're pretty bad, their defense came into this game ranked number 1 overall in the NFL. And Myles Garrett is a load, man. That guy is a road grader coming to wreck your game. But even with all of that, all they had to do after a myriad of mistakes down the stretch of that game is kick a regularly short field goal to win that contest and get out of there and go 3-0. Instead, it's blocked. The Browns find a way to come back down and tie the game and then go on to win the game. And by the way, kudos to Andre Schmidt, the rookie kicker for the Cleveland Browns, who had a horrible week one where when they were playing the Bengals and they lost by 1 point, he missed an extra point and a field goal. That absolutely was the difference in the game. So it's nice to see that guy come back and get it going. But you just can't let a team hang around. When they're down, finish them. Finish them. It's what the Bears did to the Cowboys. They never let off the gas. And I certainly think a big part of that is because they were embarrassed last week when they went up to Detroit and got absolutely strafed, and they watched the Lions put up 52 on them. When you have an opportunity to win the game, you need to make the plays to win the game. You know, Mike McDaniel has gotten into a tongue-twisting deal in his press conferences talking about, you know, when you don't win the game, you lose the game. And basically what he was saying is you either make the plays to win the game or you don't. And more games are lost rather than won. And it was kind of made fun of because it came out awkwardly. I knew what he was trying to say. He just didn't say it the right way. Don't make losing plays. Don't make losing plays. Let the other team make the mistake. That was another thing Bill pre-Chapel Hill used to always preach. We're just going to play our game. We're going to minimize our mistakes, and we're going to let the other team make the mistakes, and when they do, we'll capitalize on them. So we saw several times in week 3, if teams can just take care of business when it matters most. Because remember, you know, we play these games for 4 quarters and sometimes in overtime, and they go so long. You have so many. You probably have 7 or 6 series on offense. Each team does in every game. And the game really comes down to 3 or 4 plays that decide it. It really does almost every week, unless we're talking about blowout city like, you know, the Ravens and the Browns last week, or Seattle and what they did to the New Orleans Saints today. Oh, my God. How about what Sam Darnold is continuing to do for the Seahawks after his great season in Minnesota last year? Unless you're in blowout city like that, almost every game is going to come down to 3 or 4 plays. 3 or 4 plays that will determine whether you feel great about yourself or you are killing yourself for letting one slip away. That's how thin the margin of error is in the NFL. Just don't be the team that makes the big mistake in the critical moment. And that is what we saw several times here again and again. You have teams on the ropes, put them away. You let them hang around, more often than not, they will come back to bite you in the butt. And we saw that happen several times today. It's pretty clear through the first month of this podcast that we have going, Straight Facts Homie, that you guys love golf and love golf content. And by the way, that's why we continue to ask you to like and subscribe. We have a bunch of great golf content coming, but it is Ryder Cup week right now as we get set. As we're taping this on Sunday, it'll be a week from now. We'll find out who wins the Ryder Cup. And I will tell you this right now, the Ryder Cup is my favorite event in all of sports. Better than the Super Bowl, better than an NBA Finals, better than major championships in golf, better than the Olympics, because it's about one bunch of guys who don't give a shit about whether or not they're getting paid, really, because they're not. They just want to go beat the crap out of the other side. And it has become a fierce rivalry since the late 1970s, when instead of just playing Great Britain, when it was a layup drill for us, we included it to all of Europe, and Europe has gone on an amazing tear, winning a bunch of these Ryder Cups. So with that in mind, we want to show you the setup at the first tee for Bethpage Black. You know, we're in this era in sports where we want to take people behind the scenes a little more and get them sort of about what it's like and create more of a theater. This is the walk up to the first tee, the hallway that the players for the Euros and the U.S. side will walk up to the first tee, and then look at this incredible spectacle around the first tee and the grandstand sort of appearance that we've seen over that time frame. The first one of this magnitude came in 2018 at the Ryder Cup outside of Paris. I mean, it was a ridiculous theater, and now they've done this here. And the first tee can be, you know, a lot of fun. At Medina in 2012, I think it was, you know, the crowd was singing, and you know, you're normally supposed to quiet them down. And Bubba Watson, at that point playing for the Americans, turned to the crowd and said, "No, pump it up, let's go." And then he hit the tee ball with people screaming and going nuts behind him. And that happened as well at Whistling Straits in 2021. So that's one of my favorite things about this, is that golfers don't act like golfers. They act like fucking competitors, okay? They act like they are football players, wrestlers. That match between Rory McIlroy and Patrick Reed in 2016 at Hazeltine, it was as if we were in WrestleMania. It was nuts Okay, so that's what makes this special. And we are set for something really unique because the last 5 Ryder Cups have been won by the home team / the home country. The last team to win a Ryder Cup on U.S. soil, on foreign soil for that matter, was the 2012 Euros, who were down 10-6 going into singles play at Medina right outside Chicago, and sort of did to the Americans what we did to them at Brookline in 1999 when we were down 10-6 going into the singles matches on Sunday, and we stormed back to win with an unbelievable display of championship golf. So everyone knows what's at stake. We got smoked, the U.S. did, by the Euros in 2023 in Europe. And Rory said at that time, the hardest thing in all of golf to do is to win a Ryder Cup on foreign soil, and that's exactly what we're going to do in 2025. So he has already set the gauntlet down there, okay? And Rory had an amazing season on tour, finally completed the career Grand Slam, won a bunch of other events. But in that career Grand Slam that he finished, he was paired with Bryson DeChambeau over the last couple of days. And, Bryson said at the time that, he was asked about it, what the conversation was like between Rory. He said he didn't say a word to me all day. And Bryson kind of got his feelings hurt about it a little bit. And he's like, yeah, he didn't say a word to me all day. And, I thought at the time, well, what is he supposed to say? Hey, buddy, how you doing? You doing good? Let's go have fun. You think Ben Hogan said a lot of words to any of his competitors when he was trying to win a major championship? I know for damn sure Tiger Woods didn't say a single word, not a damn thing to anybody when he was trying to stomp on their throats, and he did time and time again. So that sort of set this whole thing in motion. And then Bryson recently had some comments about if Rory and Bryson were paired specifically in singles. He said, I'll be chirping in his ear this time. Now, if we can go against each other, you can be sure of it. Basically like, oh, well, he shut me out, so I'm going to start chirping at him. To which Rory had, I thought, an amazing response, which was, I think the only way he gets attention, meaning Bryson, is by talking about other people. That's basically what I think of that. To get attention, he will mention me or Scotty Scheffler or others. That was essentially a verbal sunning of Bryson DeChambeau. Basically, dude, get out of my head. Get out of my face. Don't come at me with that weak shit. So if they do get paired together in this matchup because of those comments, Rory will go to the tee already one up on the first tee. And listen, Bryson was amazing at the Ryder Cup in 2021. But I think he sort of opened himself up to why we hope he isn't paired with Rory. Because if he's already thinking about this ahead of the time, Rory is living rent-free in Bryson's head right now. That's not a good look for Bryson DeChambeau. So if I'm the American guys, I don't want to see Bryson DeChambeau paired with Rory McIlroy because I think Rory McIlroy's already inside his grill. And we're going to need Bryson DeChambeau to carry his weight, especially on Sunday in singles, if we're going to have a chance to come back and win this thing. And, we've had a lot of conversations in People at Golf about this upcoming Ryder Cup, whether it was Brandel Chambly or Paul Azinger, who was the captain of the 2008 Ryder Cup team when we won at Valhalla after having dropped 3 in a row. Or we also talked to Tony Finau, who told us what it's like to win a Ryder Cup and told us what it's like to lose a Ryder Cup. What I need to see from the Americans, I need to see 2 things if they're going to come away with this win. We need to start fast and find a way to play as a team. Find ways to play together. Look, Americans normally dominate singles play. We're great at going one-on-one. Now, historically, over the last couple of Ryder Cups, that has not been as prevalent, especially when we find ourselves way down going into singles matches on Sunday. But that's our strength, is that when we're one-on-one, mano-a-mano, we will beat you. For example, when we won at Brookline, I'm using the collective we because I'm an American citizen, okay? When they won at Brookline in 1999, the Euro captain protected a lot of his players. He sat out a lot of players that didn't see any action through the first few days of the Ryder Cup, the first 2 days, and then went out in singles, and they were unprepared, and they got overwhelmed. They were being hidden. They were being protected. A lot of times you're playing with a teammate like Sergio Garcia and Jesper Parnevik paired very well together, but then when they got in singles play, they couldn't hold up on their own. So what I need to see from the American squad, we need to get to a fast start. We need to get to a fast start. We need to get to a fast start and pour it on. like we did at Whistling Straits. We got off to a great start, won the morning match, and then we didn't lose a single match session, either morning or afternoon, Friday or Saturday, and we were way ahead going into singles play. We're going to need that again, but we're going to have to find a way to figure out the team component better than we have over the last couple of Ryder Cups, because the Euros are bonded. Like, they all feel like they're strangers in a foreign land. Half of them, live here and play here full time, or most of them live here and play here full time. So they're Americans in the sense that they're here, but they cling to that identity when they get together and can be a team that is not American. For example, when Tommy Fleetwood was finally breaking through and won his first PGA Tour win at the Tour Championship, how many of the Euros stood around after their round was over and waited for Tommy to congratulate him? That's a thing that they have perfected that we as Americans have not. And I think we're seeing some of that push from the team right now, and what Keegan Bradley is doing in some of the posts that they're putting out there. They did this thing where they passed the phone around, and Scotty Scheffler said, I'm passing the phone to this person, and said something about that player. And then that player said, well, that's me, and I'm passing the phone to this guy about this. They're trying to get that. That's going to be essential if we want to make it a 6th straight win in Ryder Cup matches for the home team / home country. We have got to find a way for the Americans to be bonded together way better than we have been in the past. In fact, when you go back to the 2021 Ryder Cup at Whistling Straits, the big question was, because this was when before Liv, and Brooks Koepka and Bryson DeChambeau hated each other. I mean, they couldn't stand each other's guts. Go back and look at one of the post-round interviews. It was either Friday or Saturday at the 2021 PGA at the Ocean Course in Kiawah Island, won by Phil Mickelson, who at that time became the oldest player to ever win a major championship and still holds that record. Brooks is being interviewed, and he sees Bryson walk by behind him, and there's the video of Bryson walking behind him, and Brooks is doing this. Like, I can't stand that dude. And then when it got to be Ryder Cup week, the two of them got together. There was a moment on the range where they sort of talked, hugged it out, and they found a way to work together. They had massive personal differences, yet somehow they found a way to put those aside for the betterment of the team. Now, I don't think we have anything like that going into this year's Ryder Cup squad, but I don't know how good of a friends Cameron Young and J.J. Spawn are, or Justin Thomas and Colin Morikawa. One of the reasons Justin even made the Ryder Cup squad in 2023 because of his stellar singles play record, 3-0, and also the fact that, he and Jordan Spieth were buds. They went way back, and we thought those two would play well off each other. Jordan Spieth is not on this squad. We have to find guys that work well together, just well enough to come together for 3 days so we're not doing this. There he goes again. I think that's going to be the secret sauce for Keegan Bradley more than anything else. We'll be fine in singles play. Can we get off to a fast start? And can we make the partnerships mesh? That's one of the things that Paul Azinger did so well in 2008. He said, I'm putting you guys together in pods of 4. You guys figure out how you want to do this, and then you guys make it work. He left it up to the players. We'll see if Keegan can find a way to do that this time around with the Americans, because they've got to find a way to do something like that if we want to keep this home country winning streak going in Ryder Cup play. All right, we are very excited to bring a new segment to you on our Straight Facts Homie podcast. And again, the whole point we're doing this is we want to set the record straight. We want you to be informed as a sports fan. We don't want to uselessly engage you over nonsense. We want you to understand the things that you're watching, why they're important, and why some of the things people say are not. And that's why we need you to like and subscribe as we continue to grow this podcast. It's been off to a great start. We're introducing a new segment called Prisoner of the Moment, which is where we take something that we heard during the week and say to ourselves, that really happened? Someone just said that? And so this week, as we bring in our producer and video editor extraordinaire, Duncan. Duncan, come on in here. And we're going to play a clip that has now gotten over 5 million views on Twitter on Get Up. This was something that was said after the Bills' Thursday night win over the Miami Dolphins. Duncan, roll it.
I was going to say, I'm mad at myself that we spent 9 minutes and 17 seconds and I didn't say this yet. I'm watching the game last night. I've been watching the sport 50 years. And I'm just a fan. I'm just a reporter, whatever the case is. No one has ever played that position better than Josh Allen plays it. He's not the greatest player ever. No, you tell me who has played that position better than he plays it.
Lamar Jackson and Justin Herbert right now is cooking. What are we talking about, Greeny? It's so early.
He's better than them. I'm saying you can't be better than Josh Allen. Josh Allen does everything. His command of what he's doing in the game right now is ridiculous. He just hasn't won anything. If he had won anything, we'd be talking about him with literally the best quarterbacks that ever played.
Greeny, I totally agree. If you go back to the start of the 2024 season, you want to talk about offensive efficiency, they're third overall, and he's only been sacked 18 times going back to the start of 2024.
Duncan, thank you. I appreciate that. Forgive me. Okay, forgive me for this. But what the hell, man? What in the actual hell? Now, I want to be clear about something. Josh Allen is amazing. Josh Allen might be the best quarterback in football right now. Josh Allen might be on a 15-game heater of unbelievable offensive production. And that's where it ends. That's where it ends. He is not playing the quarterback position better than anybody has ever played it. And oh, by the way, Mike Tannenbaum, whom I love. Oh, I agree with you. They're third in offensive efficiency. Well, if he's the greatest quarterback ever and he's playing better than everybody in the history of the game, shouldn't they be first in offensive efficiency? I mean, that doesn't seem like much of a stretch, okay? So when you say, I agree with you, they're third, well, then he can't be best, can he? Because he ain't even one or two right now over that time frame. I mean, this isn't difficult. This is not controversial. This is not, how dare you think that way? We're just showing you the data. Mike, you said it for us. They're third in offensive efficiency with the guy who's playing quarterback better than anyone in the history of the game. And again, I want to be clear. I love Josh. He is probably better than anybody right now. Although Lamar Jackson is very close, if not identical. Justin Herbert has been dealing, as Bart Scott smartly said, through the first part of this season. Hell, Dak Prescott for the first two games statistically has been amazing. But if you want to go back to last season when he was the MVP, yeah, I get that. You could make a very compelling argument that in his MVP season, he wasn't even the best quarterback in football. It was Joe Burrow, who just had a terrible defense around him. Go look at Joe's numbers and then look at Josh's numbers. It's going to tell you he's not walking away with everything. And oh, by the way, again, when did this happen? It happened after a Thursday night win over the Dolphins. The Dolphins are a train wreck right now. There's going to be mass deportations in Miami just because they're going to be unemployed, the coaching staff, very soon, okay? So it's also a team that Buffalo always beats. They've beaten Miami 14 of the last 15 times they've played. So I find it really comical that we're calling Josh Allen the greatest quarterback, or to use their words, he's playing the position better than anyone ever has when they beat the Dolphins. Now, again, I'm going to present this wild thing called data and statistical analysis and historical precedent, okay? Yes, Josh Allen has 301 career touchdowns. It's amazing. But on the way to those 301 career touchdowns, go look at his first couple of seasons. A lot of turnovers. He fixed that last season. So a more proper way to sort of say what you're saying, if you want to be, truthful and accurate and based on information, is that from the start of last season to right now, in the regular season, Josh Allen has been unbelievable. He has a 20-game stretch where he's playing exceptional football, and that 20-game stretch might be comparable to some of the greatest 20-game stretches we've seen from other quarterbacks. There is nothing to suggest that it's the greatest 20-game stretch we've ever seen. Nothing. Yes, Josh has accounted for 40-plus touchdowns over 3 straight seasons. That's incredible. But when you're talking about he's playing the quarterback position better than anyone's ever played it, I don't know. I think Tom Brady might disagree. I think Patrick Mahomes has had some pretty good years. Joe Burrow last season statistically was better. And then there's this little thing called the 2013 season for the Denver Broncos. You may have heard of it. Peyton Manning threw for 55 touchdowns. We've been playing 17-game seasons for 4 or 5 seasons now. Ain't no one come close to Peyton's 55 touchdown pass season. Oh, by the way, he also set the record that season for the most passing yards in a single season. We've played 4 or 5 seasons with 17 games in a regular season. Ain't nobody come close to his passing yard total either. So when you say he's playing quarterback better than it's ever been played, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. And I don't know how you can say that. Well, actually, I do know. And quite frankly, there's one part of it I do understand. When you are on television or radio or a podcast every day for 3 or 4 hours, you got to say stuff. I mean, at the beginning of that clip, Greeny said, I can't believe I'm remiss that we've been talking for almost 10 minutes and I didn't bring this up. Because you got to keep talking. I mean, things have to be said. You got to fill the space between the commercials. You got to make sure you have things to talk about, which is why what we do here, all of that goes away. We don't have any of those pressures. We don't have any of those ridiculous mandates to fill an A block, a B block, a C block, a D block, and get to the next commercial and say, coming up next, another show where they'll yell at you and give you their opinions based on nothing. The beauty of what we do here is we can boil it down to the essence of the matter. And the essence of the matter is Josh Allen is a fantastic quarterback. He might be the best quarterback in football right now. He might be. He might have been the best quarterback in football last season, even though Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson statistically were pretty close. So there's no way you can say with a straight face, and honestly, if you're truthful about it, that he's playing the position of quarterback better than anybody else in the history of the game. That is simply not true. We should enjoy someone when they play as well as Josh Allen. And again, I think Josh Allen is fantastic. But he's going to have to do this for a long time. A long, long time at this level to be considered playing quarterback better than anybody else who's ever played the game. And then the other thing which was really interesting there, and again, you know my feelings on this. It's very clear. I do not believe wins and losses are a quarterback stat. But I believe a quarterback's main responsibility is to put his team in a position to win games. And Grinny said, well, the only reason we're not talking about it this way is because he hasn't won anything yet. Yeah, exactly. Because that's part of the deal. Do you know why Dan Marino isn't considered the greatest quarterback of all time? Even though he probably had the greatest season ever when in the mid-'80s, when you could decapitate wide receivers, he threw for 48 touchdown passes in a single season. It's because the Dolphins could never get over the hump. Some of that was Dan Marino. Some of that was the team around him. But if you want to be considered playing better than anybody that's ever played, you got to win something. And I don't mean a division title. I don't mean 2 AFC championship game appearances. How about getting to and winning a Super Bowl? 1. As opposed to a guy who's been to 5 and won 3 in the era of the greatest quarterback to ever play in Josh Allen. And oh, by the way, when the Josh Allen-led Bills have played the Patrick Mahomes-led Kansas City Chiefs in the postseason, Chiefs and Mahomes 4, Josh Allen and the Bills, bupkis, squatch, zilch, 0, nada, null set, nothing. Nothing. You want to be considered the greatest to ever play? Beat the guy that's continually beating you with his team in the postseason. In the history of the NFL, we've never had a quarterback start his playoff career with his team going 0-4 against another quarterback and his team, which is exactly the situation the Bills have been against the Patrick Mahomes-led Kansas City Chiefs. So there's nothing, not a scintilla of anything but your emotions in the moment that would let you to believe that Josh Allen is doing this better than anybody else in the history of the game ever. And that's why we call this segment Prisoner of the Moment. Hey, so that'll do it for this edition of Straight Facts Homie. Again, the podcast where we don't yell at you, we don't want arguments, we want to have conversations that make you smarter and more informed as a sports fan. We are fired up, though, because it is Ryder Cup week, and we have a lot of great Ryder Cup content coming out for you. So make sure you smash that like button or subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts, and especially on YouTube. We have tons of great stuff coming your way. Thanks again for listening and watching, and tell your friends, tell your family, tell your family's family, tell your friend's family. Just tell everybody. They'll like it. Like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.